Without further ado, today's didactic presentation is on crisis planning and prevention, presented by Jane Coffey. She's a senior clinical behavior specialist with Nisonger's Clinical Support Services. The learning objectives for today's session: we want participants to be able to define and describe the crisis cycle, to identify an escalating situation and employ de-escalation techniques, as well as to describe how to respond to a crisis safely, and to be able to discuss the importance of trauma-informed care and crisis prevention. Welcome, Jane, and thank you for being our presenter today.
Thanks, Andrew. Let me get situated here and we'll get started. There we go. Okay. You can see the slides okay? Thumbs up. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So like Andrew said, we're going to be talking about crisis planning and prevention today. I know it's a big topic. We do have 4 learning objectives here, but this is really just kind of a high level overview of crisis prevention. I could talk about it all day, so we'll do our best to get what we can in about 25 minutes. So for the purposes of our chat today, when we're thinking about what is a crisis, go to bed every night around 10 o'clock and wake up around 6, but now all of a sudden I'm up and pacing and making repetitive phone calls until 3 a.m. That would certainly be for me. And probably something unexpected might be, I enjoy going to the mall after my day program with my staff to check out, do a little window shopping. But today when we get to the mall, instead of being excited to walk around, maybe I'm sitting down and not wanting to move. So that would be something unexpected. And of course, something potentially risky. So there might be a risk of harm to myself. Maybe I'm hurting myself in some way, hitting myself. Maybe I got out of the car at the mall and now I'm hitting my head on the ground. Or I'm trying to hurt somebody else. Maybe I'm hitting, throwing items, anything like that. So we're really kind of focusing today on behavioral crises and how to recognize and respond to those. So when we think about a crisis, the best thing we can do is be ready, which is easier said than done sometimes. A crisis is unexpected and we didn't see it coming usually. So the best way to avoid a crisis is to not let it feel like a crisis. And how do we do that? We do that through training, preparation, and really making sure that we have tools in our toolkit to be able to respond appropriately in the moment. So these are just some ideas and strategies for preparing for a crisis. One of the biggest things I will say is just checking in. I know a lot of the audience are DSPs or supporting DSPs, so really making sure that you know what your agency's policies are surrounding crisis intervention, if you use specific programs, and how to respond. It needs to be something that we revisit pretty often, right? So if we get that information at our onboarding point, we want to make sure that we're reviewing those things regularly to keep it fresh, because this probably isn't something that we're using every day, and we want it to feel fresh and ready and confident when we are faced with those crises. Of course, approaching any patient every day and support them through that. So always approaching those situations with patient, considering what is this person. Yeah, okay. So we'll come and revisit some of these other things as well. This next slide here talks about the trauma-informed approach. Nikki did a great job last week of really going in depth on what is trauma-informed care and trauma-informed approach. So just a little refresher. These are the different components. This is from SAMHSA of trauma-informed care. So we have safety, choice, collaboration, trustworthiness, transparency, empowerment, voice, and choice. Again, one of the best ways we can help during a crisis is to have a good, strong, trusting relationship built with the person we're supporting. So considering these things throughout our days when there are no crises, when we're having a great time and a great day, is a great way to prepare ourselves. So yeah, I won't go in depth in these since Nikki did a great job going into those last time. Okay, what I do want to spend a little time on is really talking about the crisis cycle. Oh, did my PowerPoint advance for you?
Yes.
Can you see the crisis? Okay, great. It froze up on me. Okay, so I want us to look here at this cycle. So this is something all of us experience to some degree at different times. So maybe our peak is a little bit lower or higher, but the wave is very similar for any crisis. So when we think about supporting somebody through a crisis, we want to offer, there's different things that we can offer at different points in that cycle. Yeah, and just a little disclaimer, I'm not going to be going in depth on the DOD behavior support rule today, just due to time. But please keep in mind when intervening, all paid providers are required to follow the DOD behavior support rule when providing supports and considering restrictive strategies that can be used. So you'll see at the beginning of this cycle here is baseline. Baseline is our usual day-to-day self, right? We're at our best, we're calm, we're thinking and predictable, and usually the people around us know what to expect from us, how we're going to respond to minor stressors or replacement skills, coping skills, mindfulness strategies, all of those things. We're at our best learning capability when we're at our baseline. So that's when we really want to equip people with the tools they might need if they should escalate or have a harder day, so that they can, be at their best for learning those skills. And then something happens, right? There's a pretty sharp turn there. And now we're going up an escalator. So something has changed, something has triggered that escalation. We might know what the trigger is and we might not. If we do know, that's great. Then we can just work to address that. Maybe I can't find one of my shoes, then we'll help find the shoe. And maybe that helps decrease where this peak is going, right? So we might be able to diffuse that really early. But we can also think as we're going up that escalator, maybe it's not just a shoe. Maybe we don't know what has triggered it or what is causing the agitation. So we want to really look at what other prevention can I add to the environment. So maybe there's something obvious that I can change in the environment that could help them feel safer and help them calm. So maybe we're driving and I'm not able to effectively communicate with the guy in the back seat who's getting frustrated. So I need to pull over and find a safe spot that we can discuss whatever's going on or explain better what's happening. Or maybe we're sitting in the living room and all of a sudden somebody's agitated, but the TV's on, I was on the phone, the roommate's walking around, and somebody's using their lawnmower outside. All of these things are happening at once. What can I control? What can I change in the environment to bring the temperature down a bit? We can also consider if we know that this person has some good coping skills or mindfulness strategies that work for them, maybe we can offer those. It can be challenging though. This escalation looks different in every situation, right? Sometimes our escalation is very fast, and sometimes we have a little bit more time to offer those things. But we really want to focus on safety because this person is losing their ability to problem solve like they normally would. They're starting to not be able to respond in those predictable ways that we see at their baseline. In addition to that, they're also starting to have a little more trouble understanding what we're saying. So they might have a diminished capacity for hearing us at all. So that's something important to keep in mind. Speaking to them while they're prompts, we don't want to explain too much or say too much. We really want to focus on what behavior. We want them to take a walk with us, or we want them to have a seat or take a drink of water, whatever the case may be. What we don't want to do is say what we don't want to see. We don't want to say, don't you knock over that bottle? Don't you hit that, throw that chair? Because what they're hearing might be throw that chair, hit that bottle, or maybe it wasn't on their mind, but now it is because I've introduced the idea of something that they could do in the moment. So we want to just offer safety, reassurance. And I tell everybody less is often more. If we talk a little less and just focus on maintaining calm ourselves and a calm body, calm posture, calm tone, then that can be reassuring for the person in and of itself. They're feeling out of control, but I'm in control. You might be feeling scared, but I'm not. I'm in control of my own emotions, and I can help you through this. So that's a lot to do. I always like to point out that escalation can be one of the fastest parts of the cycle, but it also has the most that a caregiver can offer to do. So it's really about having those tools and those thoughts in mind already so that we can quickly pull them out and offer those at those earliest signs of escalation to hopefully avoid that peak. But the peak is inevitable, right? Even a lower intensity crisis still has a peak. So some people like to think of it as a volcano, and the volcano erupts once you get to the peak. So we'll talk a little bit on the next slide about what's really happening in the brain at that peak. But at this point, we've met an impasse. We've lost our reasoning and logic. Our communication is heavily impacted, and they're probably not fully hearing our words. So we really want to focus again on that calm body language, short reminders of the expected and safe behavior. And just keep in mind, it really takes a calm mind and body to support somebody else in calming. So goal along with the person that we're supporting. But once the individual has reached that peak, they're really in that fight or flight, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, but they're not feeling safe for whatever reason. Something has happened and they're not feeling safe. So this is a point that they might need external support. They might need us to go in and support them to help them feel safe if they are posing a risk to themselves or to somebody else. All volcanoes come to an end, right? So at some point we will get through the peak and we will start seeing some signs of calming and de-escalation, but with yet. So this is a pretty volatile time. It can be very unstable, emotional. The person is still dealing with the residual stress, and we're probably kind of catching our breath ourselves or trying to figure out what's going on. I like to advise people during this phase. I think the best thing we can offer is time and space. Again, being mindful of your own tone and what we're saying. If we're saying anything, they might just time to work it out. Some crying or with you. I didn't put it on this slide, but sometimes there's like a picture of a double humped camel, right? We can very easily trigger that again, whatever it may be. Had that's over, something like that. It might just trigger the individual to again get agitated, and we might see another peak. That's something to keep in mind. And then you'll see down here, it actually dips below baseline, the post-depletion and recovery. And everybody, but this is exhausting. This whole peak erupting like a volcano, that's really tiring. So people need time to recuperate, and that looks different for everybody. Some people cry, some people might need a drink of water, need to go for a walk and work off some of that anxious energy. But think about what it feels like following a stressful situation, right? We just need some deep breaths, some quiet, maybe some calming music. Sometimes this is where some coping skills can be helpful if the person has those, playing some quiet music, anything like that. We want to sometimes moving on to something else. If we know what triggered this, and maybe it was it's a laundry day for that person right now, or that might be too triggering for them. Whatever it had to do with laundry, today's not the day. So moving on to something completely different that they can be successful at and build their confidence again, and reassure them that you are a safe person, you want to support them. We'll get to the laundry later. We can revisit that another time. But right now, we're really focused on recovery and getting back up to our baseline. I think this can be easy to miss sometimes, that we need to build back up to that baseline to be successful. Okay, and then hopefully eventually we're back to baseline. Again, the length of this could be 5 minutes, it could be 5 hours. It really just depends on the situation and the person. So just some things to think about. Okay, I said I would come back to what's kind of happening in the brain at the point of that volcano. So you've likely seen these words before when you hear about responses to stressors. So our body senses that there is danger. And when that happens, our primitive survival brain kind of says to the thinking brain, I'm taking over, step aside. There's no more thinking and logic. We're just going to go into either fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Once this happens, it's important to remember that our logic and problem solving skills just aren't available for us to use. So that danger that we sense could be real, like I could be being chased by a mean dog down the street, or it could be perceived. Maybe I left my favorite book at my day program and I think I'm never going to see it again. I'll probably see it again, but I don't know that, and I'm feeling unsafe. I'm feeling like I've had a great loss. So it's important to keep in mind that it's the perception of an event, and that's an individual experience. We can't tell somebody experiencing that response that it's no big deal, because to them it is. So whatever the case may be, their feelings are valid and what they're experiencing is real to them. So fight, flight, freeze, and fawn are the ways that our brain reacts to keep us safe from who was very, very demanding or insistent or inflexible and controlling. Flight might look like somebody trying to avoid situations and just not even enter it because they're concerned about that, or they're actually running, physically running, which I think comes up in our case study today, actually running from the situation. Freeze might look like somebody is shutting down or isolating, and fawning is sometimes also referred to as appeasing, but that might look like people pleasing or avoiding conflict at all cost. So yeah, okay. There's also a hand brain video. Some of you may have seen that before. There's a great hand brain video by Sarah Buffy that's available on the DoDD website if you're interested in learning more about these responses. So these are just some signs someone is escalating. The real takeaway is that there's some kind of change from baseline. So it could be restlessness, clenched fists. I'm not going to read them all to you. They're all pretty observable though. Sometimes people are stewing. So we might see somebody withdrawing or thinking hard or closing their eyes, clenching their eyes. Changes in facial expressions, things like that. So these are signs, okay, something is changing here, and I need to be ready to respond. So now we're going to get into what do you do? So how do we actually respond? So as soon as we see those early signs of escalation, that's the best time to implement some really basic de-escalation strategies. So this kind of gives you just a path to get from signs of a crisis over to a solution. So the first thing we want to do is we literally need to pause, stop what we're doing, because we need to address whatever this crisis in front of us is now. Even if it's just, I left my book at day program, we need to help this person through that because to them, it's a big deal. So we're going to pause and we're going to address whatever this crisis is. validation and empathizing, these can kind of go together. So we want to mirror back how they're feeling and let the person know that we hear them. So this is a really hard situation. You're looking really frustrated. I can tell this is important to you. Those I don't have to agree. I don't have to think that leaving my book is the end of the world. But we're going to acknowledge that for them, this is really hard. And they're having a hard time with it. And then, so we've paused, we've validated, we've empathized, and then we're going to pretend. So just imagine you're in their place. Like, think if you left your very favorite book, I don't know why I'm using that example. If you left your very favorite book at your day program and you're just heartbroken about it, you're worried you'll never see it again, what would help you feel better? You know, what need are they trying to meet? Are they trying to, are there different alternatives we could offer in the moment? So maybe we can call the day program and check and see if that book is still there. If somebody's still working at the program, we could call, hey, did so-and-so leave their Harry Potter book? And they're really worried about it. Maybe we could swing by and pick it up. If we can't pick it up today or the program's already closed, maybe we could go to the library or go to the bookstore and flip through, and we can offer reassurance that we can check on it tomorrow. Maybe we write a note for the morning staff. If I'm not going to be here this afternoon, how can we help them through the night to know I can sleep easy? I'm going to see my Harry Potter book in the morning. It's just a nice, simple framework to keep in the back of your mind about how we can get to a solution when especially with those little day-to-day crises, but this will work in pretty much any situation. We really want to pause, validate, empathize, pretend. Okay, I got ahead of myself a little bit. I started thinking about other tools we could offer, but these are just some other strategies that we can try to help with de-escalation. Giving space is huge. It can feel very like the world is closing in when you're experiencing a crisis. So giving space can be really important, unless you know the person and have that rapport built to know maybe this person needs a hug or rub them on the back when they're feeling stressed. Swapping with another caregiver, if available, is a great option. Sometimes just that change of face, especially if Andrew's frustrated with me, I can go to Devin and talk to her instead if I'm feeling more comfortable with Devin. Reminders that this is a safe place, or we want this to be a safe place. I am a safe person. You can throw your bad feelings at me because I'm a safe praise is a huge one. Just again, thinking to myself, am I being too rigid? Am I asking too much of this person right now for where they are and how they're feeling today? First then statements can be great. First, we're gonna finish up our laundry and then we get to go play outside or whatever the situation. First, we can take our medicine and then we get to go watch your favorite show that starts in a few minutes. And my favorite is always finding a way to say yes rather than saying no. I want to find a way to say yes. So if I go with somebody to the art museum and we pull up and shoot, it's closed. We had been planning all morning to go to this art museum. And rather than saying, well, we're not going, we got to go home, we can say, well, darn, and kind of join them in their frustration. I was looking forward to this too. We had planned this all morning. Let's put it on our schedule for next week. It looks like they're open on Wednesdays and we can go together that day. We're not saying we can go in because we can't. It's not an option now, but we're finding that way to get to a yes, which feels much better. I know I'm getting close on time here. So we'll wrap up. After a crisis, we really want to ensure safety for the person, of course, that we're supporting. That's our number one thing. Assuming that has already been accomplished, then we need to think about who needs to know that this just happened, right? So do I need to let my supervisor know? Would a guardian want to know? And how am I going to do that? We want to be mindful of this person just went through a very vulnerable time and might be feeling stressed or embarrassed or ashamed of what they've done. So if we can do that without the person overhearing, that can be really helpful. Of course, thorough documentation is important in everything we do, so we'll do that. But also consider if there's changes to the supports that are needed, and that can really come from asking debriefing questions, both for the person we're supporting, but also us as the caregivers. What worked in that situation? What didn't work? Could we have seen it coming? Did we miss a sign that there was some kind of trigger coming? Are there any additional tools or training or education that would be helpful? Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna skip over our example just for time, but I think yeah, here's my references. And if there's any questions, happy to answer.
Thanks so much, Jane. Let me open it up, see if anyone in the community today has any questions or points of emphasis that they would like to echo out to the team. Can feel free to write those in the chat as well.
This is Christine. I put in the chat, but want to share that I do this thing to keep me from having quit from having a chance of huge anxiety when I lose stuff. Try is everything I can get an AirTag or something on, I use it and it connects. So then if I'm saying like, oh, where the hell is my keys? I have an AirTag on it so I can ring it. Now, people that can't hear, that's a whole different issue, okay? But then there's another kind made for flashing it as another idea.
Just light up.
Yeah, light up, because that's another way to offset another way of stress. So technology is one solution for if they're having trouble finding a certain thing, just like I use that and that even can go in your suitcase when you're traveling. So you see, like, where did your suitcase go? Is it still in Atlanta or is it back in Columbus? Whatever. Okay. Because having the AirTag is so unique, just to say.
I have one in my wallet too, Christine. I always lose my wallet.
Well, there's the wallet size thing that's like made for wallet, and I have one in mine. Not an AirTag, it's a different thing. It's a card style. But yeah, those things are so that if the individual had, hypothetically saying this, an iPhone, okay, or iPad, they could see where their things are at. And then it's like, oh, where is my book? Did I hit it? Did you have it at your house? Is it behind the chair? Let's say that, okay? Like it fell underneath. And then it buzzes or flashes. Then that's a way of reducing the anxiety.
I think that's a good example of a solution, Christine. As you know, when you start figuring out what someone's triggers are and what's important to them and what might lead to that escalation. And Denise put in the chat that her client bites his hands even before you know he's frustrated. But I think that's where DSPs are so important here, because you're with people day in and day out. And you know what that change is, or you know what's not usual for the person. And so you're able to let the rest of the team know these might be signs that we're going into a crisis and what might we be able to do to prevent it. So I think that's just an important piece, and where you guys are so important.
Yes.
Other questions or thoughts from anyone? And I think for me, that metaphor of the escalator, right? And Jane had mentioned when we're looking at that when someone else's behavior escalates, it can really even affect our own emotions. So I really like those strategies of resisting to step on that escalator with the person and to try to stay calm and collected. And that's so important when a crisis presents itself, to be calm and then to work through the issue. So thank you so much, Jane, for that presentation and providing some of those solutions and tools. And thanks to Christine and Kelly for mentioning some of those other ways and tools that we might be able to support individuals. Right. I think it's all in the name too, right? Planning and prevention, so that we have the strategies in place when a crisis does hit, that we have a plan in place and try to work on preventing it in the first place. If any other questions come up, feel free to write those in the chat, but we'll transition now into our